The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Thank you for coming to the Project Entertainment Network store. Please place your order. A good choice. A t-shirt for the horror show with Brian Keene. Amanda Method coffee mug. There's more. A Necrocast Icon hoodie. That's sharp. But why on earth would you want Bizong leggings? Wait, are you Mr. Frank? The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with goodies from all your favorite podcasts. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome back once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene.
And I am Christopher Golden, and Brian, I say to you today a very buzzy Excelsior. Dude, I am so excited. I know you got shit to talk, but I am so excited about talking today about Champions number 14 and 15.
Definitely my favorites of the series so far.
Yes, and to me, like in my brain, it's these two issues that stick with me. And I thought there was a Plant Man issue, but we haven't run across that yet.
I think you're thinking back to Defenders.
Maybe. But in any case, these two issues of the Champions are the issues that stick in my brain from childhood. I love this story, and I have to tell you that like this would make a great movie. It's like basically this is a horror movie.
It is. It absolutely is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Today we're going to talk Champions issues 14 and 15. And Chris is right. It's absolutely a cheesy horror movie. However, before we get to that, a couple bits of housekeeping. We want to remind you folks that October 12th, you can meet Chris and you can meet me, and you can talk comic books with us, or you can help us make fun of Tom Snagowski's taste in comic books. We will be at the Merrimack Valley Halloween Book Festival taking place in Haverhill, Massachusetts. And again, that is October 12th, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
There you go. It's and I would say, I have to correct you and say Haverhill. But don't worry, Joe Hill still can't pronounce it, and he only lives 15 minutes away.
Yeah, I just do it on purpose at this point. We actually did a bit about that on the horror show this week, where we also talk about Terrific Productions LLC. But
I can't wait to listen to that episode. I'm super excited because and it is, it's comics appropriate, although it's modern. Well, I suppose it's modern comics. I mean, the utter buffoonery of this guy is just mind-boggling.
Well, and that's the thing. If you research the story, as any good reporter will, his buffoonery stretches back to the 1980s.
Yeah,
the 1990s. It's nothing new with this guy. But the other thing we want to let folks in on, as you know, this show started out talking about the Defenders, and then we went to the Gargoyle miniseries. And then we went to the Champions because, they obviously tie in with the Defenders. Folks want to know what we're going to talk about when the Champions ends. We can give you the list now. We're going to start with Black Goliath, which was only 5 issues long. He was both a Defender and a Champion, so it makes sense to include him. Then we're going to surprise all of you. We're going to go to Marvel's Godzilla comic book from the 70s.
Yep.
Why are we doing that? Because chronologically, Godzilla issue 3 features the Champions, and we should be talking about that today because it takes place right before Champions 14, but instead we're going to save it So we're doing Black Goliath, then Godzilla, then Supervillain Team Up, which ties into both Defenders and Champions, and then the Man-Thing. So that's what you have to look forward to.
Yes, and then after that, who knows? There are so many options. I also want to mention, Brian, since we're on Champions topics, I'm super excited about, and I never thought I'd say this, but I'm super excited about the news that Marvel Television is not doing a new Ghost Rider TV series, because all wisdom suggests that means that there will be a new Marvel Cinematic Universe Ghost Rider, and the idea that there might be a Ghost Rider on the big screen or the small screen that's actually worthy of the comics that inspired us as kids makes me very excited. Yeah,
it would be cool to see. I don't know. We just have to wait. Like, I've heard some things, but it's all just, third and fourth hand stuff. We'll wait and see what this next phase of the MCU and the various television spinoffs hold.
Well, I've heard some things as well. We'll have to compare notes after. So this issue and the next issue, I want to point out very interestingly that we still have Bill Mantlo as the writer and John Byrne as the artist, but both are now credited as storytellers. So I find that interesting. And Mike Esposito on inks in this issue, the creature called Swarm.
Dun, dun, dun. We open with a gorgeous splash page. Hercules is in the Champions headquarters there in Los Angeles, and he is under attack. In fact, he says, "Hounds of Hades, I am attacked." What's attacking him, Chris?
What's attacking him is a bunch of metal, Brian. It's the system, the security system inside Champions headquarters. And we see the sort of very attractive face on the screen of their alert system. It's a video construct, according to Bill Foster, who has told Hercules this. Bill Foster, a.k.a. Black Goliath. And all of a sudden, the security system has recognized Hercules as a threat. And comes a very interesting few panels, Brian.
Yeah.
Because thank God, someone finally realized that Iceman has been in his underpants this whole fucking time.
And Iceman himself has realized it too. He's tired of people not taking him seriously. The X-Men didn't take him seriously.
People don't take me seriously. Maybe I should wear clothes.
Yeah, so now he has a new costume and he's going to be a new Bobby Drake, a new Iceman. But then the security system, that Hercules is fighting, Hercules rips off that piece of metal and throws it through the building. And it goes hurtling towards pedestrians on the street. So Iceman has to stop it. And when he does, he then sees that, Hercules is actually battling the security system.
Yeah, and again, a couple of interesting things with Iceman here. Number one is this costume, which, by the way, has a Champions logo C on the belt rather than the old X-Men logo.
Right.
And also, the way he uses powers here, he points out, is a little bit different. And I think it's really interesting. It's the first time I remember seeing this. Basically, he dives off the building and plummets straight down, sort of sending his ice down in front of him, creating this thing to shield the pedestrians, and then uses his ice slide. But it's kind of cool to see him do something a little bit different.
It is. And, to knowledge, I don't think we ever see him use this move again. And it's actually a really great move.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. And it makes you wonder what other dynamic ways you could get him in physical action on the page. So that he's not just generating an ice slide or building an ice wall or shooting people with ice daggers or whatever. So,
right.
And then, Brian, you take this because I know this is one of your favorite characters.
Well, that's right. We transitioned to the docks, the ship docks at Santa Monica Bay. I have been to those docks, and they look nothing like what they're drawn here, but it's a small quibble. We see Dark Star, Johnny Blaze, Black Widow, and Ivan. And Ivan is leaving. He's telling them goodbye. He tells Ghost Rider, nothing lasts forever, kid. You'll learn that by the time you're my age. Natasha doesn't want him to leave. She tells him the champions need him and she needs him. And he says, but, he has loose ends to tie up back home. He's talking about Crimson Dynamo from issue 10. He needs to try to save his son, to turn him back into a good guy again. And as he's leaving, we see a small little man who looks like some sort of accountant sneaking around the docks with a mysterious briefcase. And there's a purple cloaked figure watching this man and chasing him. But before we can find out any more about them, we find out that the purple cloaked figure needs the briefcase. Whatever's inside that can help him rule the world.
But we go back thinking about Von Meyer is the person that he's trying to stop the mad schemes of somebody named Von Meyer.
Right. So then Ivan gets on board the boat, and thinking to himself as he's going to his cabin, he thinks, I couldn't tell Natasha the real reason I'm going back, or about the call I got from Nick Fury. And as he walks into his cabin, he finds 2 Russian KGB agents who have pulled a gun on him. Now, this is the first of many loose ends that will not get tied up on the show. This is, in fact, Ivan's last appearance on Defenders Dialogue. We don't know continuity-wise, I'm not sure they have ever resolved this.
Oh, that's a really interesting. I was wondering that, honestly, when I read this. I thought, geez, I wonder, because the series is cut off, I wondered if we ever got to see what became of Ivan on this particular adventure. Well,
after this, after Champions, Black Widow is in a couple Marvel team ups, and she gets a solo story in Marvel's Black and White magazine, Bizarre Adventures. But then we don't see her again until Frank Miller's run on Daredevil.
Really?
When she is in fact poisoned by the ninja group, the Hand. We do see Ivan there. Frank Miller uses him in Daredevil. So apparently Ivan had this untold adventure that we never got to see.
I mean, again, open opportunity there, Brian.
Yeah.
Especially because I can't believe that when this is done, other than those couple of stories, that we don't see. Are you sure? So the Widow was just gone for a pretty long period, actually.
To the best of my knowledge, like I said, she had guest stints. She showed up in Marvel Team Up. There's a great Black Widow story in Bizarre Adventures. It's hard to find, but very worth it. But yeah, she doesn't really become she doesn't step back into the spotlight and become a supporting character again until Miller's Daredevil. So yeah, there, to the best of my knowledge, listeners, if I'm wrong, if Ivan's fate was resolved, I'll give you a fucking no prize.
Wow.
But yeah, to the best of my knowledge, this is a story plot that never ever gets resolved. Well, obviously, we know Ivan's alive because, as I said, he shows up in Miller's Daredevil when Natasha is supposedly dying of cancer that she got from a ninja foot spike or throwing star. I can't remember which. But yeah, there's a whole untold story here. I like to think it involves Jack Norris from the Defenders. And
I think that this is a new cereal box story for you to write.
Yeah, I think it's Jack Norris
Fury,
and Ivan.
Jack Norris, Ivan,
versus Nebulon, the Celestial Man.
That sounds good. That sounds good to me.
So anyway, as Ivan's getting kidnapped, the crates on the dock begin exploding around this little accountant-looking man with a briefcase. And what comes out of them, Chris?
What comes out of them, Brian, are initially 2 gigantic robot bees. And yes, you heard that right. 2 gigantic robot bees. I will say that the presence of the robot bees is never explained. But that's okay, because they're not what's cool about this. I mean, they're cool to look at. Don't get me wrong. I mean, so basically, our little accountant friend, who we find out later secretly works for Interpol, is being attacked by these giant robot bees, and Darkstar and Ghost Rider are responding. Ghost Rider wants her to stay back. I'm the Ghost Rider. He says, stay with the widow. And then, to no one's surprise, Natasha is not having that. Johnny, she says, I'm beginning to resent your attitude of superiority towards the women of this team. It's time you were reminded, Mr. Blaze, that not only am I the elected leader of the champions, but I was being trained to fight while you were learning how to crawl.
And while she's schooling him, she's leaping into the air, landing on the back of a giant robot bee, ripping off its head, and throwing the body at the others.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, hurling it at the other robot bees. Now there are many more of them than there were before. This is a great art by Byrne on this. The way he draws Widow is great.
And I want to say something, and I may misstate it because I am a 52-year-old white guy, okay? But he draws Natasha in a way here that is not objectifying her, and yet she's really sexy in that part.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
That's rare. You know what I mean? You read a Red Sonja comic from this era, or even go back to the Defenders, Valkyrie. They're drawn not intentionally, but it's still objectifying them. Not the case here. It's a very fluid page. The panel layout. It's just, my God, I'd forgotten just how good Byrne was.
Yeah.
Until going back and rereading these.
Yeah. No, it's great stuff. Then we have now, Brian. I'm going to make quick work of this bit because it doesn't involve Swarm.
No.
So basically, what happens is Iceman and Hercules are battling the computer security system inside Champion's headquarters. Including Iceman being assaulted by the Rampage costume, which is empty. But
right.
The security system...
Remember, it's an exoskeleton, just like Tony Stark's Iron Man costume.
Yes. So the computer system has somehow activated it and is using it. And then there's a big robot that's attacking Hercules. And we'll come back to that in a bit. And now we're back to Swarm. So it's Ghost Rider now, Brian. Ghost Rider versus giant robot bees. And every time I say giant robot bees, I want to tell people we're getting to the part that's fun, but we're getting to the great part.
You know what my question is? Carlton Mellick, Carlton Mellick III, he's the Stephen King of Bizarro. He's just a few years younger than you and I. And I have to wonder, did he read Champions 14 as a child? Carlton is a comic fan, but I see so much here that must have influenced.
Well, if he's lucky, he did read this as a child.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that you have finally found your way to it as an adult, thanks to Defender's dialogue.
Yes.
One of the giant robot bees stings the Ghost Rider. It actually does. It goes right through him, and Darkstar helps him out. And Ghost Rider says, blast you, I don't want your help. Stay away from me. And she says, why do you hate me so? And we get this thought balloon. And he says, because the champions accepted you from the start while they still fear me. But now, Brian, now we turn the page, my friend. And since you have not been exposed to this before, you take it from here because, dude, this is when it gets good.
Yes. So we have our accountant, who Chris has told you is not really an accountant. He works for Interpol, the International Police. He's hiding, watching Darkstar and Ghost Rider annihilate these giant robot bees. But the purple cloaked figure approaches him. And we're told in a caption box that he makes a soft whispering sound. The word balloons are drawn in a way that indicates his dialogue is buzzing. And it turns out that purple cloaked figure is, in fact, the mysterious Von Meyer, who is walking on air. And The purple cloaked figure says, Von Meyer, yes, that was my human name, but now I am one who is many and far more than human. And then he sends a swarm of killer bees out of his arm to surround the Interpol agent and sting him to death.
Come on, man. Come on. I just thought I just love this character so much, and so I'm going to talk about him right now. So
his body is composed of bees.
He's literally a purple cloak, white gloves, some blue eyes. I'm not sure exactly what those are supposed to be.
Goggles.
Yeah, maybe. And a swarm of killer bees makes up his body.
Yeah, basically they got the bees to form a human shape together, and they all fly around in a human shape together.
Oh my god, dude. I would love to see this CGI'd. I just love this character so much as a villain. He's so creepy. I mean, it's creepy.
It is. And his origin is the classic of particularly.
Yes. Oh, and that's so. I won't give it away right now, then, because that makes it even better. His origin makes it even better. Anyway, so the killer robot bees are flying off. The champions think that they are the ones responsible, that they basically scared them off. When in reality, it's just because Swarm has killed the Interpol guy who was carrying a briefcase that Swarm wants. However, the case is coated with some manner of repellent that his quote-unquote arm units cannot approach. In other words, something about this case is repelling the bees that make up his body. So he leaves. He flees for now. The champions find the Interpol agent, and they find the briefcase. And the Widow's trying to radio Iceman and Hercules back at Champions headquarters, but not having much luck, Brian.
Right, because they're still battling Rampage's unoccupied suit of armor, which they do beat, and then they beat all the other. Well, they start to beat all the others, but suddenly the power goes out, and all the equipment fails, and we find out that it was Iceman. As they're trying to figure out what the hell has happened, why their headquarters turned against them, the rest of the champions arrive.
Yeah. And by the way, we should say that Iceman discovers faulty wiring.
Yes.
Which doesn't seem to be, that's like a Trump administration explanation for, anyway, faulty wiring is why they were just attacked by their own headquarters. But yes, the other champions return. And now, go ahead, Brian.
There's one champion we haven't seen this issue, Warren Worthington, a.k.a. the Angel, who all of a sudden crashes through a window of the headquarters and says, I came to warn you. They're coming. Millions of them. Look out the window over the city. And what we see is a giant dark cloud, but it's moving against the wind. And you go ahead, Chris. Read that last cap.
Warren says, don't you see? Those aren't storm clouds. They're moving fast against the wind. You're right, Warren, the Widow says. Dost thou hear them? Growing nearer, Hercules says. Buzzing like back at the docks, Johnny Blaze says. And then the caption, bees, an army of them. They're coming after us. And we see the entire sky over Manhattan filled with clouds of killer bees. Dude, I was reading that when I was a kid, and I was like, come on! Give me that next issue right fucking now. I mean,
Champions was bi-monthly, was it not?
Probably. I don't.
You had to wait 2 months,
but probably. But listen, I mean, and again, the only thing is, that I think of all of the. First of all, what happens next reminds me of both Assault on Precinct 13, the original John Carpenter classic, and it also reminds me of one of my favorite terrible movies from my childhood, Kingdom of the Spiders with William Shatner.
Oh, hell yes.
Now, if you haven't seen Kingdom of the Spiders with William Shatner, I don't drink. I don't drink, and I've never taken drugs. But if I did, that would be a movie that I would get so high to watch. Kingdom of the Spiders, everybody go watch it. I recommend it. In fact, I'm going to dig it up, and I'm going to watch it with my son Daniel tonight.
There you go.
All right. So, go ahead, Brian.
So, yeah, we opened Champions 15, same creative team, and the bees swarm through the broken window, millions of them, the Black Widow tells us. Iceman quickly throws up a wall of ice over the window. Angel says that, reports are coming in. The bees have covered all of Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I said Manhattan before. Los Angeles, yeah. Obviously, yeah.
And here is where I do my first nitpick. Now, Chris, as our friend Neil Gaiman knows, as our friend Patrick Freevold knows, I am a beekeeper. I have been so since the time I was 6. My father and I, we've downsized. We only have about 30 hives these days. But I'll let it go. But what we see here on page 2 is the bees begin to instantly form a hive over Champions headquarters. That's not how it works in real life.
Yes, but I will say, Brian, remember, we will shortly be explaining to our audience the origin of these bees.
Right.
So none of your beekeeper rules apply.
But the origin doesn't explain some of the things the bees do with it.
Shh. Come up with your own no prize, would you?
I want all the no prizes.
just move on.
So yeah,
hey, at least it isn't Hercules dragging all of Manhattan Island behind him, physically moving. You know about this, right?
I know about that. Yes.
Yeah. I think it was Marvel Team Up, right, or something like that.
It was. Yep. So basically, Ghost Rider figures out that Ghost Rider and Black Widow figure out it's the briefcase that they recovered from the Interpol agent. The bees want the briefcase, but they don't know why.
And then we see, basically Champions headquarters is under assault by this massive swarm of killer bees. They formed a hive around the top of the building. They're coming through the air vents. The Ghost Rider is seeing those. They're like, this is what reminded me of Kingdom of the Spiders, actually. But they're coming through the air vents. Dark Star is trying to attack them with the Dark Force, trying to keep them from killing people because they know that these bee stings can be lethal. Hercules rips the giant computer system out of the wall and smashes a fair number of bees with it. And Angel's using his wings to blow them back, but also questioning why Hercules needed to pick that particular $1 million piece of wall to smash bees with. They're playing Hercules here like the Hulk.
Right. Then we get something that actually is scientific, and full credit to Mantlo and Byrne here, because this actually can happen. I've seen it happen in the winter with our hives. Swarm crashes through Iceman's ice wall, and he explains that the ice was weakened by the heat of countless minute living forms pressed against it. Basically, the body heat of the bees melted through the ice, and that is factual. That's how they stay warm in the winter in their hive. It's their combined body heat.
Yeah, and yep. Swarm coming through the window with millions of bees at his back as well. And again, like
now, I want to ask you, Chris.
Yeah,
why did Swarm need the giant robot bees if he himself is composed of bees?
Shh. Shh. Quiet, Brian. You know what? He needed them because they're cool. But no, he did not need the giant robot bees, and we do see them reappear here. There are some giant robot bees, and I think it's just because Byrne wanted to draw giant bees, and Mantlo said, "Fine, they can be robots." And so Darkstar gets stung by one of the giant robot bees. Bobby Drake is distracted by her being attacked, and so Darkstar and Iceman are both being carried away by the giant robot bees. Swarm has somehow treated himself now with a neutralizing agent so that he can now pick up the briefcase, and he flees. And then go ahead, Brian, make fun of what happens next, but it's still fucking cool.
As you're narrating this, I'm just picturing little 8-year-old Chris Golden. I have just such a clear picture in my mind of you reading this.
Come on, man. This is cool.
So yeah, Hercules and Widow and Angel and Ghost Rider go chasing after Swarm, but they find out that the hive that the bees are building over Champion Skyscraper now is inside the building. They are stopped by a hive wall of honeycomb.
Yes, and Hercules,
which is blocking the entire corridor.
Hercules is trying to punch his way through it, but it's instantaneously reformed from the other side with every punch.
Which is not how hive walls work.
Exactly. So then, as they're trying to deal with that, they realize there are more than just Iceman and Darkstar's lives at stake. Ghost Rider tells Angel to look out the window, and then it turns into a real horror movie.
Right. We see.
I literally expected Marjo Gortner to show up in this book.
Yeah, we see civilians down on the street just getting stung by millions and millions of bees. Now, we'll come back to that. Understand, this is not a single bee sting. We see a panel of people literally covered in bees.
Yeah, screaming. One of them is saying, "My eyes!" It's like a little kid screaming, "My eyes." So it's pretty horrific. He says, laughing. So the Widow commands Ghost Rider and Angel to go outside and help the people. And Hercules and the Widow are going to try to reach Swarm. And then we see the outside, and in classic 1970s Killer Bee movie fashion, there is a bus full of school children surrounded by killer bees about to go off an overpass.
Right. Ghost Rider and Angel save it. And we notice that the bees are not bothering Ghost Rider. He proposes it's maybe they're afraid of frying their stingers off. But basically, we get a time transition between panels, and we're told that for the next few hours, Angel and Ghost Rider are saving everybody. And then Angel tells us, the reader, that they've contacted Black Goliath and Hank Pym for an antidote to the bees' stings. Now, you go back to that previous page where people are literally covered in thousands of bees.
Yeah.
There is no antidote on the fucking planet, real world or Marvel Universe, that's going to save those people.
Well, not only that, but there's no antidote to death.
Yeah.
So if hours have passed, based on what we see on the previous page, thousands of people are probably dead.
Yeah. The 8-year-old inside of me is loving this. The beekeeper inside of me is like, come on.
Just shh. Stop that. All right. So we get Iceman no longer in his ice form. It's Bobby Drake and Darkstar regaining consciousness, surrounded by honey, basically.
Yep. Yeah, they're
and
inside.
Then he says, "It's all right, honey," which I hope wasn't on purpose. But
I
basically,
think it had to be, right?
It probably is, but I'm pretending it wasn't. And basically, then Swarm approaches them.
And here's my favorite part: Swarm's origin. He was once Fritz von Meyer, the world's expert on toxic poisons, a beekeeper, and an expatriate Nazi.
Dun, dun, dun. And there we go. There's the pièce de résistance, Brian.
I'm a sucker for Nazis who fled to South America stories. I love that trope.
He's an expatriate Nazi scientist who is now a swarm of killer bees in human form.
Yep.
Come on.
It doesn't get better.
Can't we put him in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV series?
Absolutely. Absolutely, we should.
Anyway. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was distracted. I had a pitch pop into my head involving Arnim Zola and Swarm, and it's like this buddy road comedy.
Oh, my God. All right, so we get him in the jungles of South America. He'd been hiding there for a long time, devoting himself to his research, the breeding patterns of killer bees. until he realized that this one huge hive, bigger than anything he's ever seen, contains a bunch of bees with a curious, a sense of human curiosity and passivity unknown to their species. They're basically sentient. They're smart bees. And he decides, wait, I could use this. So he goes and builds a kind of aggression ray of some sort, skipping through the questionable science. But when he fires, he intends, Brian, to make these bees just as smart as they are, but return them to their killer bee aggression, and then hoping they will serve him. But what happens instead?
Before we get to what happens instead, no, you know what? I was going to bring up that Russian bees are naturally pacifist. That's what the discerning beekeeper prefers to have. But if you want to make them angry, just reach into the fucking hive. He didn't have to build this ray, but he did. So, yeah. The bees were no longer passive, but neither are they under his control. In seconds, they're stinging him, stabbing through his protective garb, which does not happen in real life either. They sear his agonized flesh as he feels his life torn from him and his consciousness is shredded. Somehow, in the midst of all that, he reaches out and seizes the queen bee. With her in his power, the swarm is his to control. But he had become an aggregate man, a living embodiment of the swarm, his own scientific consciousness added to the mutant intelligence of the swarm.
So what I love about this, two things. Number one, I love the fact that the bees are the ones with superpowers. So based on him hitting them with this ray, they basically have some kind of superpowers. And they are now a literal hive mind, and his mind is now a part of the swarm. So they're all sharing. So basically, all of these bees together compose swarm,
right?
And including whatever intellect they have. However, what happened, Brian? What happened with that Interpol agent?
Well, the Interpol agent stole the queen and encased her alive in amber, not dead, but alive.
And again, we're going to gloss over the fact that there's no explanation of why the Interpol agent would do that or how he could, but we're skipping that. Move on.
Yeah, that's what's been in the briefcase. That's what Swarm and his little friends are after. And, Bob Iceman says, you didn't have any way of freeing the queen from that amber without killing her until you saw our powers. Well, forget it. We're not doing that. And Darkstar says, oh, yes, we are. You can't know what it is to be apart, to be trapped, but I can. This is a mysterious thing here from Darkstar. And keep in mind, we don't know a lot about her powers or her origin yet. So this hints at something. But yeah, she lashes out, shatters the hive wall, shatters the amber. Is the queen okay? Spoiler warning, she is. But we're transitioning now, Chris, to who?
Hercules and the Black Widow still punching honey, giant honeycomb. And then some more giant robot bees come through, which allows Hercules to smash them. And then we have some great art by Byrne. The hive wall has stopped reconstituting itself. Our way is clear to Iceman and Darkstar, the Widow says. They still live. Darkstar stunned, and coming right behind them is Swarm, but not just Swarm, Brian. Here's the latest completely unexplained and inexplicable plot twist that they don't even bother trying, but I still loved it.
Like a Pokemon, which I know about because I have an 11-year-old, like a Pokemon, the queen bee has entered the final phase of her mutation, which means she's grown giant size, like the robot bee.
Yes. And she continues growing, allowing her head when she's fighting Hercules to be like, it's basically like Mothra versus Hercules at this point.
Right.
By the golden horns of Minos, which I wanted to say, but Minos was the king. It was the Minotaur that had the horns, but okay. Anyway, there's a fight with the queen. The champions are defending themselves. Swarm is attacking with all of various bees. Hercules kicks the queen in the thorax, and he doesn't want to hurt her, but she is but a servitor of wickedness, he says, Brian. And what does he do? He whips her. Go ahead.
Yeah, he does a move that we've seen him do previously in the Champions. He tosses her out over the Pacific Ocean, far, far away.
And they can hear an insect screaming. And then comes Brian. Come on.
Yeah, this is horrific. Yeah, this is
great.
Good. This is good. Okay, what is Swarm composed of?
A swarm of bees.
So when a queen goes somewhere, the bees will follow her. So Swarm's body begins to detach itself and go flying off after the queen.
The bees just flow away in pursuit of...
Yep. Flowing like water and revealing what, Chris, underneath that purple
revealing that underneath all the bees, Swarm himself is nothing but a cloak on a skeleton, which
That's
collapses. Right. It like clatters to the ground, and Black Widow is filled with horror. The skeleton yells no and then collapses, and Black Widow says, without the swarm holding him together, there was nothing there.
That's right.
And then, Brian, a really, really interestingly, and I'm sure accidentally prophetic statement in the final caption.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to touch on this episode. Absolutely. The final caption box tells us, we will leave you with one final discomforting thought. There may again come a time when the fate of the world will rest on as small and as simple a thing as the buzzing of a bee.
Indeed.
And, we've talked on this show a lot about, there's a faction of readers today who don't want politics and social issues in their comics. And we've talked on the show a lot about how those things have always been in comics. You go back to Steve Gerber on the Defenders with, the women's liberation movement at the time, early feminism, racism, not just, white supremacy, but, from people of color as well. Then J.M.D. Mateus, his Secret Empire run, with, focusing on neocons and usurping the government to start wars. Politics and social issues have always been a part of comics, particularly Marvel Comics. But and we joke on this show a lot about how they seem to mirror the times we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
But as a beekeeper, I can attest colony collapse is a real thing. I see it all the time, and I see it getting worse every year. And that caption box really struck a chord with me.
Oh yeah, I got to the end and it chilled me. I was like, wow, I can't believe how much of a chord that strikes right now, because they're talking about the fate of the world resting with something as simple as bees. And what do we hear constantly is that essentially, may not be the fate of the entire world, but the fate of human civilization may indeed rest with making sure we perpetuate bees. What do we need right now, Brian? Bees and trees. That's what this world needs more than anything.
Exactly. So yeah, that was really poignant. It really struck a chord with me, and I'm glad that you caught it as well.
Yeah, great. But again, this 2 pages of the bees flying away from Swarm's body, revealing the skeleton beneath, and just like, and that last panel of the champions turning away in horror from the skeleton, the close up of the skull with one lone bee resting on the orbit of the eye socket. Again, I mean, people who are listening rarely hear me as excited as they've heard me talking about these two issues, because I freaking love these two issues. Yeah. So,
well, now I'll tell you, as excited as you were for these issues, that's how excited I am for next week. Next week, we're not reading the Champions. For those of you reading along at home, you want to go get Iron Man Annual number 4. It's the size of 2 comic books, so it'll be what we're talking about next week. But I'm excited because it has my all-time favorite Marvel villain, even more than the Headman or Nebulon or the Elf with a Gun. My favorite Marvel villain of all time, MODOK.
You know, I feel like we should have Snogoski guest on this, because that's one place you and he would agree. He is a MODOK lover.
Let's do it. Can we get him?
We'll try. We'll see.
All right,
see if he's available. Of long
Tell him he doesn't have to read Defenders. He just has to read Iron Man issue 4.
Exactly. Now, do you want to do? And then we're doing housekeeping here. Do you also want to do that issue of Avengers? Let's just tell folks, if we have time, we're also going to go in to the follow-up to that story.
Avengers issue 163.
Avengers 163.
Right, if we have time.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so, and maybe we'll have Snogoski with us. That would be awesome.
Now, Brian,
he's been on the show before, but never with me.
Yeah, aren't you happy that you have read the Champions? And we're not done yet, but isn't that Swarm story alone enough reason?
No, that's fantastic. And, for new listeners, because I know we pick up new listeners, what Chris is referring to here, I read the Defenders religiously as a kid in the 70s, but the Champions was not available at my newsstand. We didn't have comic book around ages 8 or 9, the same time I was reading Steve Gerber on Defenders. Yeah, I would have loved this just as much. That was fantastic, particularly the skeleton at the end. That was fantastic. Kudos.
I remember being a little kid reading that, and my eyes bugging out like, that is so cool. So anyway.
All right, folks. In the meantime, please consider supporting us. Go to projectentertainmentnetwork.com and buy some Defenders Dialogue swag, or buy an ad on the show. We'll be happy to promote whatever you have. It doesn't have to be a comic book or a book. If you have a restaurant I know that we are the #1 podcast at the Oklahoma City airport. The airport employees listen to Defenders Dialogue. We'll promote your airport, whatever you have.
There you go. Listen, Brian, I want to point out while you're saying that I want to make clear to folks that we don't make any money off of this show.
No.
Any money that goes to support the podcast goes to support the network, Project Entertainment Network, which hosts our podcast and many other fine podcasts. And when we promote advertising and other ways, merchandise and other ways to help Project Entertainment Network, it's to support all the podcasts and let them continue to be able to bring us into your lives with this idiocy.
Exactly, and I'll put a fine point on that. I make money off my other podcast, The Horror Show with Brian Keene. The network makes money off of it too, but I make money off that one. I do this one out of love, and I got to tell you, if you put a gun in my head and said pick one, I would drop The Horror Show with Brian Keene. I would continue to do Defenders Dialogue for free, because it is one of the few joys that weekly, no matter how bad things get, I can say, well, at least this week I get to talk about comic books with Chris.
At least this week you got to talk about a Nazi made of killer bees.
So we will be back next week with Mental Organism designed only for killing MODOK, Iron Man, the Champions. Be here. What do we say, Chris?
We say Excelsior. True believers.
See you next week, folks.
You're listening to American Top 40. More tragedy in the news today. Kim Kardashian has a new baby. What the hell? There's nothing good to listen to.
The price is wrong.
Hey, wait, what's this?
Anything moist. You gotta roll that.
See, it makes me do
I'd be going down on myself.
Shit.
Hey guys, it's Bill,
Mick.
Maya.
And Junior.
from the Unsupervised Podcast.
Check us out every Thursday on the Project Entertainment Network.
Take a break from the stress of the world and come have a laugh with or at us.
Bill.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology featuring short fiction from the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network shows. Three guys with beards. Jim Moore, Jonathan Maybury, and Chris Golden.
Tom Clark from Necrocast on
Brian Keene of The Horror Show. Chuck Buda. And Armand Rosamilio of The Mando Method. Mary San Giovanni of Cosmic Shenanigans. Jay Wilburn from Matters of Faith. John Urbancic of Ink Stains.
Biz Zung's Mr. Frank.
Available on Kindle and in paperback and through the Project Entertainment Network store.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.